So often, time zones get a bad rap when they're not the real problem. The real problem is that developers feel unempowered to either make decisions or ask questions.
Welcome back to App Creative, everybody. My name is Dale Richards, founder and CEO. We are an app development company on the Silicon Slopes of Utah, and we love building software that changes the world. If you want to innovate new app experiences, scale your technology, transform your business, and disrupt the market, start now by subscribing and hitting the bell.
Good times, live in the moment, feel like summertime.
So is offshoring your software development effective from both a technology and a business perspective? There are a lot of tech leaders that have either had experience working with offshore teams, or maybe they're looking to learn from the experience of others. They want to know what's the good, the bad, the ugly. How can they avoid major problems? There are a lot of opinions out there, and oftentimes they're stated as facts, since those who have had negative experiences emphatically share them as universal. This is what happened to me, therefore it must be true of all offshore providers, all offshore teams. In reality, there are actually many factors that contribute to offshore success or failure. Now, your success will depend on how well you solve these offshoring problems. So let's look at some commonly held views on offshoring and see if they are myths or truths and what we can do to mitigate these issues. So the first assertion is that offshore software teams can't communicate or collaborate. We had someone come to us who's now a client. They came to us saying, the communication with our last tech provider was just awful. We could never reach them when things were broken. When we did get in touch, communicating what was wrong was painful. And it was hard to basically get things fixed. Perhaps the most difficult aspect of working with an offshore team is communication. What factors can make for good communication? Time zones. Let's start with time zones. Working with someone on the other side of the planet means that you're lucky if you get a half a day overlap with them. Someone is going to need to stay up late or wake up early. That can cause burnout, especially if things aren't going very well. One easy thing to do is to explicitly document everyone's schedules and where the overlap is. So we want to show when is the offshore team working compared to when is the onshore team working. Now keep in mind that someone doesn't have to be at their computer to collaborate. What we've done is shown on the schedule, when team members are actually at their computer, at their keyboard, fully engaged for their normal workday. And then also, when are they expected to be reachable for, a question or for an emergency? Since a lot of our team members collaborate via Slack, it's often easy to just get an answer to a quick question. And it makes it safe to ask questions outside of normal working hours. Otherwise, what happens is that you poison the global dynamic. One time I messaged a brand new client. It was 6 a.m. my time, which is actually 5 a.m. for him. He was on the Pacific coast. Ironically, we were both in the same country. This wasn't even really an issue of offshoring. But anyway, he blew up about how I shouldn't be messaging him that early unless it's an emergency. I mean, come on, it's messaging, for goodness sake. Just respond when you're available. I'm writing a message because I wanted to get this to you as soon as I could. I want to shorten the time to collaborate, and you can respond to me when it's convenient for you. Another thing that we're doing currently is that we have someone represent the client and someone represent the vendor in both time zones. So for example, with one current client, most of the customer stakeholders are actually located in the United States, but they do have actually a handful of employees, one of which, who is in Eastern Europe. He serves as the team lead for this API that we're building for them. So from the vendor side, we have people here in the United States. That means that technical questions can be explored during the Eastern European workday while the US team members are asleep. And by the time we all wake up, the offshore team has already solved problems with the client representative in their time zone. Also, when something needs to be escalated or communicated during the working day in the US, they can easily pass along that feedback to us without waiting for, the next morning. So basically, communication about the product is happening 16 hours a day. So often, time zones get a bad rap when they're not the real problem. The real problem is that developers feel unempowered to either make decisions or ask questions. I can't count how many times I've had developers take on a task, hit a road bump, get stuck, and not communicate. And so in this scenario, the solution is not to give up on offshoring. The actual solution is to coach the developers on new communication norms and expectations. So they need to understand that if they get stuck, they should send that Slack message immediately and not wait. They should not be waiting for the next 24-hour cycle. Language. People argue both sides that, most offshore developers do or don't speak English. We have yet to find good data sources that show accurate English proficiency levels by country. English proficiency really doesn't matter very much. Even if you have good English speakers, that's no guarantee that you won't have misunderstandings. Just look at all of the communication dysfunction within companies here in the United States. According to PR Newswire, the soft skills training market is expected to grow by $14.9 billion from 2019 to 2024. That's a lot of growth for just teaching people how to communicate with no language barrier. So communication itself is the problem, not language. So one important solution is to watch for evidence that communication has actually happened, and to teach your team members to do the same. Communication consists of several elements: the messenger, the message, the audience, an information gap, and then also evidence that that information gap has been bridged. How often do we give instructions to our offshore developers, and then we assume that, since we've communicated to them that, that they've understood? What we need to do is look for proof of that understanding. If they don't provide that proof, then we need to prompt them for it. So can you just reflect back to me your understanding of the outcome that we're looking for, that we want? Another solution that seems simple to us is to have language skills going in both directions. So for example, our project leads here in the States speak Russian with our Russian-speaking developers, and most of the developers also speak English. But if there is a need to clarify something, it's easily done. Once we had a developer who became frustrated with something, I don't remember what it was, some situation, and he wrote this Slack message to the client using all caps to emphasize certain words. And he was trying to communicate meaning to these Americans, but it just kind of came across as, shouting, all caps, and discontent. So I got on the call with him and asked him, if that's what he meant, and it wasn't. So we talked through the cultural differences, and he was good to go, no harm, no foul.